Yeah. It cuts down the echo. It cuts the, exactly. Now, if we could only fix the lighting and add mics,
And heat.
then it'd be a good room.
So now that it's really private.
We need little tiny fans.
So if everyone's ready, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we have had a delegation request today from Luke Johns and Melanie McCauley of Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing Inc. respecting the opposition to the cultural heritage impact assessment of the former St. Thomas Anglican Church parsonage, 18 West Avenue South. Can I ask the delegates just to put their hand, okay. Welcome.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Terry, seconded by Councilperson. All in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of our minutes from the previous meeting. Item 3.1 is our minutes from April 21st, 2016. May I have a motion to approve those minutes? 12, seconded by. All in favor? It's 10. 10. This is the second one. Thank you. Under delegation requests, we have a delegation request from Luke Johns and Melanie McCauley from the Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing Inc. respecting their opposition to the Cultural Heritage Impact Assessment of the former St. Thomas Anglican Church parsonage at 18 West Avenue South in Hamilton, which will be discussed as part of our Policy and Design Working Group notes. What is the committee's wish today?
I'll move it.
May I have a motion to approve the delegation request to speak today? Item 5.1 is our consent items. It's our Heritage Permit Application delegated approvals. We have a Heritage Permit application for the lighting schedule at 610 York Boulevard in Hamilton at Rendering Castle National Historic Site. May I have a motion to approve this, to receive this delegated approval? 12, seconded by Mark. All in favor? Carried. We now call upon our delegation. Welcome to our meeting today. I'd like to remind you that you have 5 minutes to address the committee. May I have a motion to receive if you'd like to make your presentation. You can stay at the back or you can come up to the front if you'd like.
So I'm Luke Johns from Senior Consulting representing Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing. Sacagawea Nonprofit Housing is a long-standing social housing provider in Hamilton. Has a conditional offer on a property owned by Good Shepherd at 18 West Avenue South. Sacagawea's goal is to build a new affordable rental housing, specifically 16 new 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. Based on identified community housing needs, the proposed Sacagawea development will help address a significant gap in affordable housing units for one person and small family Aboriginal households. Tim Walsh and his associates have been retained as development consultants for this project. Sacagawea and TWC recently completed another development, a 6-plex on Main Street West, that involved an extensive renovation on a vacant property. Residents moved in March 1st, 2016. The City of Hamilton was a partner in this development and provided a corridor loan to enhance the exterior of the building. In terms of 18 West Avenue, the property is south on Main Street West between Wellington and Victoria, and is located just east of downtown Hamilton within the Stinson neighborhood. The following services are located within a 15 walk of the proposed housing development: grocery shopping, parks, Des Droits de Desnes Aboriginal Health Access Center, schools, government services, and retail shopping. The location of this property is well served by public transit on the current Main and King Street bus, and is in proximity to the proposed LRT for the Hamilton. Another positive of this property is the seller is also a non-profit housing provider, so understands the challenges of securing an appropriate site for new affordable housing. This property is expected to transfer ownership in June of this year. Importantly, the property is zoned for multi-residential use, and the organization had its formal consultation with the city planning staff on February 3rd. At that meeting, the organization received feedback on the planning approvals required for the site, and from there completed the necessary background studies. Since that time, Sacagawea has completed the Cultural Heritage Impact Assessment and an archaeological study, as well as environmental assessments. Based on the findings of the Cultural Heritage Impact Assessment, it is our understanding the Heritage Committee would like Council to designate the property as a cultural heritage resource. Sacagawea's plan to carry out the purchase of the property and demolish the building and build affordable housing. These objectives support the official plan goals of the City of Hamilton in creating new affordable housing, as well as the city's 10-year housing and homelessness plan. Sacagawea's proposed development also supports the general planning goals of intensification adjacent to the LRT route. We do recognize that our proposal is at odds with the general heritage goals of this committee. There are a number of reasons why it is not possible to conserve the former Anglican Church of St. Thomas Parsonage in the context of Sacagawea's development plans. The location of the building on the property is set back on the site, so any development would obscure the former rectory partially or completely from view. The proponent needs to achieve the development of at least 60 apartments in order to create a financially viable economies of scale for the new development. Retaining the existing building prevents this. The building does not meet present-day fire code or accessibility standards, and the cost to meet these standards in an adaptive reuse scenario would exceed the organization's budget for this project. The proponent is not committed to conserving all or part of the existing parsonage, given the church's history of colonialism with regard to First Nations. In summary, it is not viable for Sacagawea to preserve the building in the context of their development plans, and once the property transfers ownership from Good Shepherd, the organization would like to proceed with demolition of the building with financial assistance from the city. However, Sacagawea is willing to complete the preservation by record of the former parsonage. Thank you.
Are there any questions for us?
Yeah, just wondering, the housing unit you think you are building, you mentioned that the existing building would not allow for accessibility. I was wondering if you're actually thinking about building any accessible units.
We haven't gone to architect, but we are looking at accessible units for this building.
Are there any other questions? If not, may I have a motion to receive this presentation? Kathy, seconded by Chuck, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Our next item is item 7.1, which is our presentations. Today we have a presentation on the light rail transit project. I'd like to welcome Kelly Anderson of the LRT project team.
Hello everyone, my name is Danielle Burry. I am a senior project manager of LRT planning with the LRT office here at the City of Hamilton. So what I'm going to do is go through a project update presentation, and I'll note that thank you very much for having us here today. This is our first time before the committee. It definitely won't be the last as we continue through our detailed design process. But today we'll give you an update on where we are and where we're going. So this is a map of what we refer to as our blast network. This is a higher order rapid transit corridor alignment throughout the city. We're currently looking at the B line component, implementing it first, and that's what has been approved for funding through Metrolink, as well as a portion of what you see here as the A line. We like to show this just to remind you that this is our first step towards higher order transit throughout the city. This is the map of what has actually been funded and approved by Metrolink. It includes the B-line portion from McMaster to the QUEENSTON traffic circle. The extension out to Eastgate Square would form phase 2 of that development, as well as a spur line which forms part of the A-line alignment from King and James to the West Harbour GO station, and funding permitted up to the waterfront. So for the B-line component, it's primarily center running. What this means is that it has lanes of traffic which operate on either side of the rapidway. It is a segregated corridor, meaning that those lanes would not be shared with general traffic. They would be dedicated to LRT. There are currently 13 stops along the alignment between McMaster and the Queenston traffic circle. And generally speaking, the stops are 600 to 800 meters apart. Typically, the walking distance we see is 400 meters or a 5-minute walk. So having them that space accurately covers the area for pedestrians to access the alignment. For the A-line spur, it will be a little bit different. It will be shared running, which means that instead of being segregated from traffic, it will actually share those lanes from traffic. One of the reasons we're doing that is it's a little bit more of a constrained corridor, and we want to protect for the vibrancy along that James Street corridor. Currently, there are 5 stops for that alignment portion, budget permitting. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of what the alignment looks like, starting from the west and going to the east. So between McMaster University and the Highway 403 area, it's center running LRT. It has 2 lanes of traffic in each direction on either side. So essentially your cross section is 2 lanes of eastbound traffic, an eastbound LRT lane, a westbound LRT lane, and 2 lanes of westbound traffic. There's also bicycle lanes that will be provided between Macklin Street to Coots Drive. There will be an end-of-the-line terminal at McMaster, and this will allow for smooth transfers between HSR, Rapid Transit, and GO Transit. And there will be an LRT-only bridge over Highway 403 in order to connect the LRT from the Main Street west portion to the King Street portion. So this is a rendering that we have of the stop location in front of McMaster University. I will note that the stop design has not been completed yet. That's something that we're going through over the next year or so. But this is just conceptually to give you an idea that the stop will be in the center of the road with your traffic lanes and bicycle lanes on either side. You can see it blends very well with the area. It's not a full station building. It's an at-grade open-air shelter. So from the bridge over the Highway 403 area to downtown, again, it's primarily center running LRT. In this case, there's 1 lane of traffic in each direction. What this does for loading, stopping, and parking is there are some impacts as to those access because you only have 1 lane of traffic. So we're looking at a variety of different solutions to deal with that, including looking at how we can utilize side streets, rear alleyways, how we can operationalize things. So we're looking at that through our detailed design process. There will be a connection to the A-line spur component, which is the James Street North component at King and James Street, through International Village, which is John to Wellington Street, to provide access to parking and driveways on that side of the street. We won't have the 1 lane of westbound traffic in that area, again, to protect for the vibrancy of the area. We, again, are looking at alternative solutions such as laneways and side streets to deal with the loading and parking issues. So it will be side running in that component, so you will actually have your tracks adjacent to the sidewalk, but we're looking at really preserving and enhancing the pedestrian environment in that area. So this rendering is in Gore Park. I'm sorry to show you a snow rendering when we just got over that whole component of winter. But just to give you an idea of what it looks like in all forms of weather. So here we have our stop, which is adjacent to Gore Park. The other stop, which would be partnered with it, would be on the other side of James Street there. And again, this is an area where you only have 1 lane of traffic, and then the stop and the tracks are adjacent to the park. This is in International Village at Walnut Street. This is not a stop location, but just give you an idea of how the tracks look adjacent to the sidewalk and with the 1 lane of eastbound traffic. So for the A-line spur, the James Street component, like I said, this area is not segregated for LRT. It is shared with traffic. Very similar to streetcar operations that you would see in Toronto, for example. It is the same vehicle as the B-line. Rapid Transit, the segregated area, it just operates a little bit differently. This also allows us to have minimal parking impacts along the James Street North component, so we're preserving as much of the on-street parking that's existing in our design. It will run to the West Harbor GO station. That was announced through the Metrolinx announcement, and hopefully, budget permitting, we can get to the waterfront as well. So this is showing the James Street North component. You can see here there's no curb separating the LRT lanes from traffic lanes. It's all generally one shared use area. So from Wellington Street to the QUEENSTON traffic circle, again, we're center running with one lane of traffic in each direction. There's an important connection to the Stadium District, which has Tim Hortons Field, the new high school, and the Bernie Morelli Center. And I have a rendering to show you afterwards to show how we'll be serving that area. There's a connection to the Ottawa Street business area, which is a very important component to serving along the alignment. And there will be an end-of-the-line terminal at the QUEENSTON traffic circle, again, making sure that we have very smooth transfers between HSR and rapid transit, and ensuring that conventional transit and LRT all operate as one system. There will be a transfer hub to the east of Hamilton and to Stony Creek, recognizing that although we aren't going to Eastgate, we want to make sure that we continue to serve at a high level our ridership in that area. So this is the location of the stop at Scott Park, and you can see we have renderings there of what the new high school building will look like. Again, it's a center stop that allows us to be a little bit wider here, as we expect it to be a very well-used stop. And again, you see the one lane of traffic in between the rapid way and the sidewalk. So ongoing work, as I said, this is our first time visiting you and just giving an update of where we are. We are definitely going through a process of refining our design. Come the fall, we hope to come to the public and this committee with more details as we refine that design. We're doing our traffic impacts and modeling to understand how our current design impacts both of those things and whether or not we have to make tweaks in our design as a result of those findings. We're doing our ridership modeling to understand what our ridership will be for the LRT corridors. Finalizing our maintenance and storage facility location. So as part of this, we need a large site to store and maintain all of the vehicles that we will have for operating the system. We are doing a transit project assessment process amendment or addendum. As part of that, we're looking at all of the EA studies that were previously done as part of the approved TPAP from 2012. Part of this will include cultural heritage and natural heritage resources and looking at what the impacts were from the previous design, what our changes to the design have now, and how that may impact heritage. Also noise and vibration, air quality. So basically all of the EA studies that were done previously, we're making sure that they are all in alignment with what our refined design is looking at. We have a technical advisor on board now that's under Metrolinx, and they're beginning work on the procurement process, and that will be looking at how to engage a consortium who will design and build and take the project to implementation. And we're also finalizing property impact details. So as we refine the design, we can understand better where we would need additional property in order to accommodate the design. So currently the factors that could change the alignment that I just shared with you and what we're looking at September is first cost, as I said, budget permitting, the A-line component, as well as if we receive feedback through the stakeholder and community feedback process of additional stops or less stops, that would have an impact on the design. As we finalize or refine our design work, whether or not certain stops work in certain locations and whether or not they need to be tweaked, and the alignment as well. And engineering and utility impacts, we're starting to look through all of the underground utilities, and obviously that's an important component of refining our design as well. So our next steps is our engagement and outreach process. That's part of why we are here today, but we're also talking to the BIAs, the Chamber of Commerce, advisory committees, board meetings, LRT corridor outreach. We're doing an extensive amount of outreach to all of the property owners along the corridor. The environmental assessment addendum will be taking a report to the July LRT subcommittee, an update there, and then public meetings will be held in September to go over the beginnings of the update work that we're doing as part of that EA addendum. And so that's all I have for now, but we can open it the floor to questions, and I will do my best to answer them.
I do have one question on, in looking at the report and also the transportation master plan. I don't really see anything that does show the other routes in the lower city, such as the way I arrived here today on the Delaware route, how that is affected, how these other routes are affected by this new system.
For sure. So we are in the early stages of working with HSR to understand how the network may need to realign in order to A, feed into the system, and B, operate within the corridor. So for example, the B-line bus The LRT, the Beeline LRT component will replace the Beeline bus, but we're looking at, is there a need for other buses to operate along that corridor? Where do they terminate? How do they get to that terminal? So it's an ongoing process that we're very closely working with HSR to resolve. So I don't have an answer for you yet. Hopefully we have a few more answers for you as we continue through the process, but it's something we're definitely cognizant of, as we don't want this to be an alignment in isolation of the rest of the transit network. We really want it to be fully integrated and seamless for our users.
It's just that the Delaware route, for instance, where I live, I could almost walk here, but at the time I walked to the new station, so whereas I'm 2 minutes from the bus stop right now. So this is what I'm worried about, is that especially the older people in our area have to get somewhere. I don't think they're going to be walking that far to get to the new system. And also, of course, the Delaware route takes in Rosedale and other areas as well, Stone Creek. So
Right.
that is what I'm looking at, and I haven't seen any material on that.
Right, so rapid transit is a higher order transit system, which is typically the limited stops, which has lesser coverage than your local routes. But definitely HSR will be looking to cover the network from a level of service that customers are used to. Sure.
Which advisory committees are you going to be meeting with?
We will be meeting with the Accessibility Advisory Group. I believe, when are we meeting, Kelly?
Sometime in June.
June. Yeah, the June meeting.
Okay.
So we'll be giving a similar presentation and opening it up to all questions for that committee.
Okay, I'll save my questions for them.
Yeah, this committee's impact or interest should be from a heritage standpoint primarily. My comment is that at what stage will heritage impacts be addressed? Normally what could happen is all the planning is done and the final presentation is made, and then it's way too late to adjust for heritage impacts. I'm hoping that during the planning process, as issues come up, that they would come to the heritage committees, so that adjustments can be made to maintain or preserve, etc. So I'm sure you can't answer that question here, but I'm suggesting that hopefully those concerns will be addressed early in the process and not left to the end when it's really a matter of too late to answer the schedule.
So as part of the EA addendum process, which is where we're doing the cultural heritage impact assessment, there are two kind of checkpoints for that process in the fall and then earlier next year. So those studies will come to completion later in the year. And so hopefully before we finalize the EA addendum, we would have an opportunity to share those results.
It's a kind of a follow-up, I guess, on Luke's comment there, and it's to do with, I think I read in the newspaper about expropriation or purchasing of 28 properties. Do you have an idea that any of those properties have heritage systems?
So there's going to be, the final numbers for expropriation, we're not sure on. That totally depends on refining our design. We have on our drawings thus far, we've been working with heritage staff to make sure that we have all of the heritage information available to us as we go through the design process. Whether or not any of those properties are impacted or not, I can't say yes or no at this moment, but we are definitely aware of where those resources are along the corridor and are doing our best to cognizantly treat them appropriately.
If it's not a heritage one, I guess just a taxpayer. I noticed that there's a link in the west end of McMaster to go buses. I noticed a link in downtown along James Street North to the West Harbor Bill. Phase 2, if it happens, from Queenston traffic circle to Eastgate. Why is there no connection to go service with the proposed Centennial Bill station?
So that's just not part of current plans. Whether or not a future connection is something we look at is definitely on the radar. But
My recollection
yes.
is that nobody thought about linking it to the West Harbor until somebody in the public saw it and asked questions like that.
I can bring up the question. We do have staff from Metrolinx here as well. I don't know if they want to speak to any connection or
Yeah, I don't have any further information on those future plans for that connection. But as far as the LRT goes, the Queenston Traffic Circle, there's no plan to go service to that terminal or the LRT. But I think it would be an HSR, perhaps question for a connection between Centennial and Queenston.
Yeah,
As part of the
I don't live in Stony Creek, but it would seem to me that we're leading a somewhat ad hoc approach to a significant part of the city that commutes, that they still have to find their way from wherever they live to either the GO station or Eastgate. There's no connection there. Whereas we seem to have addressed the GO connection with LRT in the west end and in the center of the city. And this does make sense to me now, that there wouldn't be some anticipation of that. I mean, we're not talking about this as being first phase, it's phase 2.
Yeah, and I'm sure Go route planners are looking forward into those sort of things.
I will note, and I didn't mention it when I was on the slide, there is an additional GO connection that we're making, and that's between the King and James LRT stop to the Hunter Street GO station. There is a pedestrian connection that we are looking to do to connect the LRT stop to the Hunter Street GO station there as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, may I have a motion to receive the presentation? Well, so our next item is item 8.1, is a policy and design working group meeting notes from April 18th, 2016. Chelsea is here to speak to policy and design working group notes and the accompanying presentation. You have before you the cultural heritage impact assessment.
Through the chair, perhaps someone would like to provide a brief overview of the committee's or the living group's discussion.
Sure. So this property, 18 West Avenue, came to the Policy and Design Committee for review, and we considered the report at length that we were given with the Boulder Associates report. And the report really speaks to very, very strongly to the heritage attributes of the building, and really the recommendations in the report are in line with what we would typically see for designating a property. So we decided at the policy and design that would be the recommendation coming forward to this committee from our working group, and that's then the notice of designation, I believe, was released, and that was the outcome of our interpretation of this report.
Well, I just,
Through the chair, I'll just provide a brief summary of where we are with this particular property. So the applicants came for a formal consultation in February, proposing demolition to accommodate 16 apartment units. And so as part of that formal consultation, staff identified the requirement for a cultural heritage impact assessment, recognizing that this is the parsonage of the former St. Thomas Church, which is a designated property that is just adjacent to this property. So we recognize that there is cultural heritage value here and asked for a heritage impact assessment. So they've submitted their heritage impact assessment in advance of going through their actual development application. So they came in for formal consultation. They have not yet submitted this development application, but they're seeking this committee's input and wanted to address the heritage aspect of this particular application prior to coming forward with the development application. So that's why this report is in front of you right now, and we brought it to the policy and design working group for their review and input, and that's how you have this recommendation to consider designating this property in front of you.
Did you have any further comments? Are there any questions from the committee members about the property?
Well, it's not a question, it's an opinion. And I would strongly concur with the recommendation to designate the structure. And I can agree with the delegation that made a presentation about the need for affordable housing, etc. I do not, however, believe that 16 apartments supersede another loss of a heritage building. So from a protection standpoint, I would recommend strongly that the designation should go forward.
Councilor Burke?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions through you to it's zone for that as well, right? It's a mixed use?
We'll confirm that.
If you, and my last question, Madam Chair, in terms of the designation, if it were to, if the vote is to put the designation on the parsonage, what additions could be added to it to accommodate any low-income housing uses that might fit with this property?
Through the chair, designation will allow us to take any alterations proposed to the property through a heritage permit process.
Right.
So I can't necessarily give you any details of what might be appropriate yet, not having anything in front of us to review. But heritage designation would allow you that opportunity to have that fulsome review that's going to consider the impacts on the heritage attributes of that particular property.
Okay, so thank you. I think you answered my question, because basically I wanted to know that, okay, we designate the building. If they want to put an addition onto that building, are they going to be allowed to do so? What I think I heard was that once the designation is on, you would look at any applications that would come forward and then determine. So would that be done in an
Delegated authority for heritage permits, but it would go through that formal heritage permit process.
Okay, and last question, through you, Madam Chair, second last question. Is the presenters today, are they aware of the process and what needs to be done if they so choose to go that route?
Through the chair, I'm not sure the extent to which the previous staff member had those conversations with them, but I'm happy to welcome that conversation and discuss those opportunities, I suppose.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. So folks, our staff are going to be available. If we do designate this building, they will be able to meet with you and talk about what could be done and what the process is for the permit reviews, okay? I just wanted to make sure that you heard that and you understood, and that Chelsea is here, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
John?
So I have two questions for staff as well through the chair. So the first one is, are there many other properties like this, kind of a Gothic style house in the downtown core, even in that area? So I guess it's kind of how unique is this property in that area?
Through the chair, that's a good question, and it is somewhat addressed actually in the heritage impact assessment, because they did some research to see how many, just in general, how many parsonages we have in Hamilton, and they found very few, and I'm not aware of any other specifically Gothic revival in this type of style here in Hamilton, and I think that was reflected in the report as well. So to that point, I would say that it will qualify to that description of rare.
Yeah, I guess that's going to be my second question is for the other churches that have been protected or designated, I guess. I don't remember any other kind of parsonages or residences beside them, right? And it would seem to me that part it seems relatively rare, and even beyond beyond that, I can't think of any others, and maybe I'm just me, but I don't know if the city knows of any other parsonages or residences for the church staff that have been protected in the past as well. Is that a very common thing?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any other original parsonages that we still have along with the church. I'm aware of some that are not original, that are more modern personages. We're not aware of any original ones. Not to say that there aren't any, I'm just not aware of them.
Ron?
I heard in the delegation, as one of the concerns in retaining the building is that they wouldn't be able to get the 16 units on that piece of property. I need to understand what restrictions there might be in terms of density, height of buildings on this property that would include an amendment possibly that would still allow the 16 units and retaining the building.
So through the chair, I'm just mentioning to Chelsea, I'm not sure of what they proposed specifically. I can't recall the details of their application. So unfortunately, I can't tell you whether or not it's a matter of zoning is what is the issue, or the fact that based on what they proposed in their design, keeping the parsonage wouldn't work. So unfortunately, I don't have that information. We can provide that for the committee.
I also heard that in the presentation that there's a concern culturally in terms of the First Nation owning a property that had been previously affiliated with the Anglican Church. I don't know that that can be addressed through this process, but it seems to me that there should be some more dialogue with the focus of trying to retain this in the design. Whether that ultimately is possible, I guess that's what the process will tell us. But it would seem to me that before I'm comfortable supporting designation, I'd like to see that alternatives have been explored, so that we have a sense here that we have gone the full course and we have looked at alternatives and options that would come up with a compromise. I think we came up with a compromise at our last meeting vis-a-vis the Gore Park properties that looked, it wasn't what everyone wanted, but it was a reasonable alternative. So if we could do the same thing here, I think that would be great.
Any other questions? So I just, through the chair, wanted to, at the Policy and Design Committee, what we spoke of was we really only looked at the report. We didn't look further at what the proposed usage might be. So we stuck to what was at hand, is does this property fit the criteria for the designation? And because we felt that that was the mandate of our committee, and the response that we wrote to the proponents was that that was our mandate, and it is a mandate of this committee, is to, right now, is to consider the designation, and then further down the line, if applications come in for, just as it would on any designated property, for alteration, demolition, whatever it might be, that we would consider that then. So really, today, what we were considering is the designation of the property.
Again, my point is that if we had explored all the alternatives before we designated the properties on Gore, we might have had a very happy outcome where both parties are ecstatic about what's been achieved without the lengthy delay and all the rancor that went along with it. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So I appreciate our role here is to consider the heritage implications, but these things are not in isolation.
No, but what we felt was that our role and our mandate here was speaking to the designation, and that we certainly felt that through planning and other, and also the elected officials, that they may be better suited to decide those aspects, that really we were going to focus on the designations.
If I could just confirm Ron's concern and back up your statement, the designation will then put this project into a sequence of events where all these things will be addressed, and with heritage in mind. Prior to designation, as I see it, these things could be addressed, but aren't necessarily addressed from a heritage standpoint. Once it's designated, then heritage becomes an element in the consideration, and that's my comment.
I can appreciate that, but I also want to put forward the case that we may have had a much more amicable resolution and a quicker resolution to the Gore Park thing if the designation hadn't been in place. Anyway, that's an opinion.
I think it's just really the report came to us and it's so thorough and so in-depth. There really wasn't any sort of thread that we could pick up on and say that it doesn't meet the criteria. It's just an absolute, so that's what we did.
Are there any other questions or comments about this project? So I think just getting back to what our discussion is on today, we have before us a cultural impact assessment for 18 West Avenue South. It's a comprehensive report that outlines both the historical and the cultural value of this property. It's a unique property being a manse associated with the church. The mandate of this committee, we must remember, is based on the cultural heritage value of the property. We're advising council on heritage of a property, not proposed development plans, so we need to base it on the report that's in hand. The recommendation that's been brought forward to us by the Policy and Design Subcommittee is in front of you in your package. That 18 West Avenue South, Hamilton be included in the Register of Property of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest. That the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value, Interest, and Description of Heritage Attributes for 18 West Avenue South, Hamilton attached and Appendix A be approved. That the Notice of Intention to designate 18 West Avenue South, Hamilton attached as Appendix B be approved. And that the City Clerk be directed to take appropriate action to fulfill the City intention to designate 18 West Avenue, Hamilton under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act on the owner of property and on the Ontario Heritage Trust, and to publish the Notice of Intention to designate in a newspaper having general circulation in the municipality. So that is your motion. Ed, may I have a motion to approve those recommendations? Well, seconded by Tim. All in favor? Any opposed? Please raise your hand. Yes. Our next item is item 11.1. It's correspondence from Councilor Aidan Johnson, from President of Inc., respecting the proposed designation of 4 Queen Street South in the Scottish Rite. So this is information.
I'm happy to move to receive.
Do you have something? Happy? All in favor? Please. Our next item is 11.2, which is our year-end report. There's no update at this meeting. Item 11.3 is our Municipal Heritage Committee recognition awards. I think the update is that they were approved through council, so those nominations will go forward. We're going to be meeting in the next short while just to wrap up some of the final details for the awards presentation. May I have a motion just to receive that update? Seconded by both. All in favor? Item 11.4 is attendance of our members from the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to the Ontario Heritage Conference 2016 in Stratford. Kathy, will you like to attend?
I was. So, just a little quick overview. The conference was actually sold out. I think that's probably the first time ever, so it either speaks to the hospitality of Stratford or the general state of heritage in Ontario. So it was a wonderful conference. Hamilton definitely was very well represented, because I made sure that I told everyone to come to the conference that we're at the national conference in the fall. And also our former councillor McHattie was actually one of the presenters at the conference. And he spoke of the Lister Block and all of the, economic development that's happened in Hamilton, and just all of the general great things that are happening in Hamilton. So that was wonderful. I attended another session that was of particular interest. I won't go through all of them because it was 2 very full, packed days of lots of different learning experiences. One of them was actually about heritage conservation districts, and it's something that I think that maybe coming forward in the future that we will be looking at is creating more of these heritage conservation districts. And this particular session was actually on post-war houses, and some in Kitchener they have a conservation district that's very intact post-war housing. And one of our properties in Hamilton was actually mentioned, one of the, on Englewood, as a wonderful example. And so that was something that I think later, as we go through, that we'll be, looking at those other areas that maybe we don't always think of as heritage because they're not, back into the 1800s, early 1900s, they're post-war, but that was a really interesting session to attend. So like I say, Hamilton was, everybody's been invited, all of those 300 odd people to come to Hamilton in the fall, and Hamilton's definitely on the map. Lots of questions about heritage, LRT, all kinds of things that I couldn't necessarily answer, but it was a great conference.
Any questions for Kathy? May I have a motion to receive? Terry.
I was just wondering if there was much on accessibility.
Actually, there was, Terry. There was a whole session on accessibility from there's an architect firm in Toronto that specializes in doing a lot of accessibility for heritage buildings. And they actually have done accessible entrance to Osgood Hall in Toronto, which is a really special, very well thought out, lots of considerations for a building of that significance, and what they've done there to address that. So that was quite interesting. They did a tour of Toronto of how difficult it is particularly to get into the older heritage buildings, whilst recognizing that we need to maintain the character of the buildings, but that we need to make them accessible to the public, to the people that are working in the building. So that was definitely, I'll be bringing that forward in more of our meetings here.
Fantastic, thanks.
Kathy, do they have the presentations available for the delegates? Or any information that we can share with the committee on that particular presentation?
No, but I think I could, I know that architect, this firm, so I think I could probably get that presentation. Because it was like a video, and it was a real kind of, we could see how the impact of the heritage, but also to the people trying to use the buildings. Mm-hmm. So that we could definitely probably get our hands on, maybe even if the Conservation District ones.
Yeah.
Learning, yeah.
That'd be great.
May I have a motion? Mark, seconded by Terry, all in favor? Carried. We now move on to our buildings and landscapes list. So we'll quickly go through the properties. Just as we're doing that, I'm going to pass those photos around. We received some information from the Mountain Heritage Society. Those pictures are from Century Manor. There's been some vandalism, so we'll discuss that when we get to that item, but that's just for everyone to pass around. So anyways, our buildings, neither building's red. We have the 10. Councilor Johnson?
Relatively, I have nothing to report. I wish I did. Sorry, Councilor Priest says.
Well, I have a sign up that says development's coming tucked back in on the remaining building.
Thank you, George.
So that's it.
Nothing to report.
Andrew Sloss.
Nothing to report.
So Century Manor, so like I mentioned those photos, there's been broken windows. Someone has removed some boarding from a ground level door. There's been at least what appears to be at least 2 times that someone has gotten into that. Now Mountain Heritage Society has reached out to IO and provided a request that they do something about it. I know Chelsea, if there's an update from staff.
Through the chair, so Alyssa made staff aware of it yesterday, so we contacted our municipal law enforcement staff, and I spoke to them this morning, so they're going to go out on site and do an inspection and issue any orders as may be appropriate. So they're on that. I've also been made aware that there are some other buildings there that are apparently also unsecure, so they're going to address that as well.
Yeah, from what Pat Saunderson said from the Mountain Heritage Society, IO did address their first concern of some vandalism and did some repair work, but there's more in subsequent episodes, so they're continuing to keep watching what's happening. The next one is Beach Canal Lighthouse. Nothing to report. 18 to 28 King Street East. No. 1 St. James.
Other appeal, yeah.
Driving by it today, there seems to be activity. I'm not sure if the building is now occupied or what the story is, but vehicles in the driveway, people going in and out. Michael looking into this to see if there is something.
Which one's up?
One St. James.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't want to create false optimism.
All Saints Church?
Not anything too much of it. One person I spoke to, they didn't seem to think that there was any direction at this moment as far as an agreement with someone to move forward on the property, but why it has been developed, and there's some things going on. No one seems to really know what that is.
There's broken stonework and the landscaping's all been pulled right. 43 to 51 King Street East. Under buildings and landscapes of yellow, we have Delta High School.
Nothing further at the moment.
James Street Baptist, there's no further update. Oh, no.
It's a question for staff. The 70% sold sign is still on the facade, and it hasn't changed in 6 months. Is anyone aware of how this particular property is selling or progressing?
Through the chair, no, I'm not aware. I do know they're still working on their site plan and getting their final site plan approval, so they're still moving ahead, but I don't have any information on the sales.
St. Mary Church,
I haven't heard anything further.
the Pearson Home.
The last I heard, Madam Holmes purchased it, the sale went through, and I'm not sure, Anita, if they're working with planning on, I don't think there's been nothing that's come forward. I don't know if they're in site plan at all.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yep.
Charlton Hall.
I don't have anything on that, no, haven't heard anything.
St. Charles United.
Nothing further there.
33 Bowen.
They were just checking, just to check, Councilor, was it right that that has been sold, that property?
33 Bowen?
That's the...
I'm not aware that it's
Schlante.
officially been sold, that Schlante is correct,
Yeah.
but I'm not officially aware, though I do know that, I can't remember the gentleman's name. that
The
owns
Vickers
Vickers
Bites.
Bites,
Yeah.
is looking at it. But I think it was yesterday somebody mentioned to me that there may be somebody else that's looking to go in there. But it's only rumor of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that was in the fog of my mind too.
2251 Normal Road.
So there's no changes that I'm aware of there? It's the status quo from the last time we were updated?
Trouble Hall.
Trumbull Hall looks like it's having some advancement there, opening on the main floor of a wine bar called Toast, and I was just wondering that with the new ownership there, that they seem to be very concerned with it. It would be make a proposal to move it back to the green section.
If that's a motion you want to...
That's the motion I'd like to.
Is there someone that would like to second? David? So we have a motion, all in favor? If you're opposed, raise your hand. Any opposed? None? Okay, so we will move it to green. Under our properties of green, we have the Royal Toronto Hotel. Tim, do you have anything on that?
It looks like it's going
The Thomas Building? Although they are working on the property. Desjardins Canal?
I'm going to check and I'll report next time.
St. Mark's, there's no update. Ockmark, the captain's not here. Westdale Paving?
There is a public meeting coming up on, I've got my book here, next week.
No, it was, they had a Friends of Ockmark last night.
Sorry.
It was last night.
Some front page expected.
Yeah.
There's another, okay, there's something else happening with it.
The council meeting on the 15th of June?
Is that what?
That's what they were encouraging everyone to go.
Okay, very good.
Westdale Paving?
So some good news, Reed Westdale Theatre. Thank you, Councillor Parker, Councillor Pearson, for supporting my motion at last planning. That motion established that we're going to be fast-tracking the investigative process for Westdale Cinema with a completion date of 2019?
Through the chair, I believe that's correct.
19, if I recall. So that's great. That's very significant news related to heritage in Westdale. Could I ask, through you, Madam Chair, just for some clarification about the next steps and where we're at?
Through the chair. Through the chair, we have it on our work program scheduled for maybe 2018. I can't recall off the top of my head. But so it'll be in that year that we'll do the full cultural heritage assessment and then bring the report forward to planning committee and council through this committee. So that's really the next step.
And so what's involved, just for my clarification, what exactly is involved in that investigative process?
So through the chair, through the current process, we hire heritage consultants to do a full cultural heritage impact assessment. So they look at the architectural value, the historical value, and contextual value. We do like a full background report and make a recommendation about whether or not we should proceed with designation under Part 4 of the Untitled Heritage Chapter. So it's after that fulsome review that we're then proceeding with the recommendation forward.
And does that mean sort of going into the building, or does it mean researching the historical origins of the building, both?
Through the chair, generally we will ask permission from a property owner to enter into the building. They are not required to provide that. So in events where we are not allowed permission into the building, then we will observe what we can from the public realm.
Got it. What about a public building like the Westdale Cinema, where you can buy a movie ticket and go in?
Through the chair, that's...
I promise to pay for the movie ticket.
Through the chair, to the councillor, I think our preference is to get an agreement to go in so that they're aware of what the city, what studies being undertaken.
Got it. Great. So just keep me posted. Anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Ron.
Just a comment, again, progress towards a very successful and fulfilling process and accomplishments here without a designation. I just want to point that out.
Councillor Parker.
So I'm just wondering through you to staff and to the board councillor as well, with the Westdale Theatre, it's under green right now, which properties whose status are stable. Would we want to move that to another category? Are we sure that it's stable? Is everything copacetic? I'll leave that up to the board councillor.
Sure, it's an interesting question. So I'll make the following remark. All I have in terms of evidence that there's something to, in quotation marks, worry about at Westdale Cinema is a rumor. Right now, it's arguably stable because there are no known plans for radical modification or repurposing or anything of that kind. So, I don't know. Given that it's now being investigated for designation, I wonder if it belongs on this list. I don't know what the normal practice of this committee is, so I would seek advice.
And so that, through you, Madam Chair, is why I was seeking the advice of staff as well.
Through the chair, similar to Councillor Johnson's comment, we don't have any formal indication that there's any proposed changes or any proposed ownership. So I don't have anything to suggest that there's any immediate threat to this particular property.
So we'll leave it for now? Okay, for now.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for the question, Councillor.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next property is the federal building.
You drive by it, you see it's progressive, and everything seems to be warranted, keeping it on this category as green.
Through the chair, I just have an update on the federal building. We've been informed that they have retained a conservator to work on the freezes on the facade, and that'll be happening in June of this year.
Thanks.
The next property is Jimmy Thompson Pool.
Question just from the earlier presentation. through the chair to staff, would this be a building that would be on that light rail issue of the heritage assessment? Because that's a heritage
Yes,
property,
so through the chair, I do believe that the light rail goes right by that, but certainly that's been taken into consideration, and it'll be as part of that heritage impact assessment. If I recall, based on the preliminary designs, I don't think it's going to impact the particular building.
And just through the chair, the Jimmy Thompson Pool, the plans of the Pan Am precinct and Welling, they've been coming through the policy and design working group. So we know where the stop is, whether that's an HSR stop right now or LRT later on. But those sorts of impacts are coming through that working group, so we get a look at how they go.
Yes, if I could, because we received this presentation yesterday, reading the whole. So if you go to the slide, it's Wellington Street to Queenston Circle. Staff advised us yesterday. This building, this picture here is actually the intent of what the school, this new Scott Park School is going to look like. So they were able to transfer it onto this plan. And if you look down the way, that white building, that's the Jimmy Thompson Pool. So there's no intent to have any issues with that. You can see how the light rail is going to go on both sides on the south side of the street.
Well, it looks like the stop would be farther down. Right.
Okay?
Through the chair to the councillor, I can give a bit of an update as well on the site plan application. So there was a site plan or two site plan applications submitted to staff that have been conditionally approved, one for the addition onto the Jimmy Thompson Pool and one for the new high school. To answer your question, the stop is going to be right in front of the high school, so their plans are showing the location of that stop. And so then there's no, it's not in the vicinity of Jimmy Thompson Pool.
And the last property on this list is Audrey's own house.
So the young family that's living in there continues to do a wonderful job upgrading the property, and a dump box was delivered this week. Not that I'm stalking them. Very obvious. It's a dump box. It's right in front of the property, and there's lots of old pieces of wood that are being thrown into it. So I'm quite thrilled at the Aubrey's Overland House being reused, and it's wonderful.
That's great. And then under Heritage Properties Black is our Margie House. Any
Chair, we have retained consultants to do a full cultivage assessment. So they're undertaking that work currently, and hopefully we'll be able to report back to this committee shortly.
So may I have a motion to approve all that information? Ron, seconded by Councilor Pearson. All in favor? Carried. Is there any other business?
Just a question for staff. Periodically, we receive a work list of scheduled designations, and I'm just wondering what might be on your schedule for the balance of this year.
Through the chair, if this committee would like, I'd be happy to provide an update, a written update at the next Heritage meeting.
I was at a meeting, this is just as an information piece, I was at a meeting this morning, and one of the presentations was about the grand opening of the rock garden at the RDD. What is of interest, was of interest to me, and could be of interest to this group, is that the connection of the city of Hamilton to the RDD, it's a freestanding entity, but if you go back into history, it was due to the city of Hamilton and the City of Hamilton Parks Department and earlier councils who purchased the land, the property, so it's extremely interesting from an area standpoint how involved Hamilton was, whereas the general perception, I think, is it's a Burlington, it's Hamilton, but the perception is connected to Burlington, less so to Hamilton. So the presentation was fantastic. It might be something that it might be made for this committee. It was just beautiful.
If there's no other results.
Just one more question about what goes on the list. Would it be appropriate to move this property added to our watch list? That's that we're going to be looking at for designation onto even the black, because it does face imminent demolition. I can make that motion.
Like to put that motion forward.
Is that, I don't know, but they're likely not going to buy the property, so status is not changing. So I agree, it should be on the list, I'm not sure that's where it should be.
Yeah, I understand.
They were talking about a land transfer in June,
Right.
so there's a potential. So if you'd like to put forward a motion,
I would like to put forward a motion to have this property added to the list, and I wouldn't mind watching it as my family of houses here observe.
do we have a second? Councilor Pearson?
Well, and I would recommend under red, because red really is properties where there's perceived immediate threat to heritage resources through demolition, neglect, vacancy, alterations, and/or redevelopment. So red.
That sounds good.
I agree.
So we have our motion, our seconder, all in favor? Carried, any opposed? Okay. If there's no other business, a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. There you go. All in favor?